26 years old now, but this story starts when I was just 17. It was raining that day, cold rain, falling straight onto my thin jacket, slipping into every crack in my heart. I was standing on the grass in front of my house, once a home, a place I thought would always be safe, with a backpack, $1,200 in cash, a few sets of clothes, a laptop, and all my identification documents that I had secretly prepared beforehand. A part of me had hoped this day would never come, but the other part knew it was only a matter of time before it did. Behind the door that had just slammed shut, I could hear my father's cold voice and my mother's sneering smile. "You'll come crawling back. Beg for forgiveness. A month at most." It all started in high school. I wasn't a bad kid. I learned when I tried, but I had ADHD, which wasn't diagnosed until everything had already fallen apart. I couldn't sit still for 8 hours listening to teachers talk about things that had nothing to do with the world I was living in. I liked working with my hands, building, fixing, creating, things you could see, touch, make. Like that summer I spent helping Uncle Judah, our neighbor, renovate his garage. For the first time in my life, I felt good at something, but my parents didn't see it that way. To them, manual labor was something to be ashamed of, a failure, a last resort. Their plan for me was simple: graduate with honors, get into the state university where my dad went, then marry the girl next door, buy a house and have a few kids. They wanted my life to be just like they dreamed, but that wasn't my life. When I got a partial scholarship from a construction training program, based on the work I had done, I thought this would be my turning point, a chance to show my parents that I wasn't giving up, I was just taking a different path. I chose to tell them that at dinner, but I was wrong. My dad threw his plate down on the table, and my mom cried like I just told her I was dying. "There's no child of mine who's going to be a laborer," my dad yelled. "Are you too dumb to see the opportunity you're throwing away?" he added. I tried to explain. Talked about passion, about skills, about how I'd be learning something I loved, but they didn't listen. "If you don't follow our plan, you're not our son anymore." I stood up, quietly, went to my room and stuffed a few more things into the backpack I had already prepared. When I came downstairs, my mom looked at me, horrified. My dad was still standing by the door, arms crossed, like he was waiting for me to surrender. I didn't say anything. I just walked out. "You'll come back. No one survives out there without us," my mom shouted after me. The door slammed shut. It was colder than the rain falling outside. I called Corey, my best friend. His mom answered the phone. Immediately, they said I could crash at their place. That night, I lay on Corey's couch, tossing and turning. The only question running through my mind was, did I just lose my entire family for choosing my own path? The days that followed were a chaotic blur. Going to school in the morning, trying to hide the fact that I was homeless, working part-time in a local store, then washing dishes on weekends at a diner, eating instant noodles, applying for emergency aid for homeless minors, taking steps to legally become independent with the help of my advisor, the only person at school who actually listened to me. In the middle of all that was the silence from my parents, except for a few texts like, "When you're ready to apologize and accept our help, you can come back." I didn't respond, not because I wasn't hurting, but because I swore I would never let them see me return in failure, just as they expected me to. I graduated high school while still living on Corey's couch. My parents showed up to keep up appearances. They tried to make small talk after the ceremony, but I just silently walked away. I was no longer their son. I was someone starting over from scratch, and I had no one but myself. A few weeks after sleeping on Corey's couch, I moved into a new place, a rundown apartment shared with two strangers. Marcus worked the night shift, so I hardly saw him. Tyler, the other guy, was pretty much always selling something, but he paid the rent on time and didn't bother anyone, so I didn't ask questions. The apartment had cockroaches, the kind that aren't afraid of people, street roaches. Turn on the kitchen light and they scattered like they were having a party. The shower had hot water sometimes, and other times it turned into freezing ice while I was still covered in soap. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors argue, apologize, and make up the way couples do. But it was the first place I could call my own. No one could kick me out as long as I paid on time, and I swore I would. I did 2 jobs, working at a hardware store in the evenings and washing dishes on weekends at a diner. There were days when I barely got 3 to 4 hours of sleep, lost weight, ate instant noodles, eggs, and, if I was lucky, I'd steal a few fries from the kitchen. No one knew I was the kid who got kicked out of his house. They only knew me as Brady, the quiet guy who worked hard, did the tasks others didn't want to do, and never complained. Some nights I'd sit on the floor, eating cold noodles with the lights flickering because of old wiring. I was so tired that I just wanted to collapse without a blanket. But amid all the dirt, loneliness, and deprivation, there was something priceless that I never had when I lived with my parents: the freedom to choose. No one forced me to write scholarship essays. No one looked at me with disappointed eyes when I said I wanted to pursue a trade. I was living a difficult life, but it was my life, and that meant everything to me. My parents still sent messages like, When you're ready to grow up for real, come back. Don't let your pride ruin your future. But they never asked how I was doing, what I was eating, or if I was okay. 3 months after I left, my dad showed up unexpectedly at the hardware store. I was stocking light bulbs when a coworker whispered, "There's a stranger looking for you." I looked out and saw him standing among the shelves, hands in his pockets, completely out of place in a world of bricks and dust. I hid in the back room, watching him stand there for 15 minutes before he left. No message, no sign of regret, just his unexpected presence, and then gone. During that time, I was almost like a walking corpse, skin and bones, dark circles under my eyes like they were drawn with charcoal. But then the first opportunity came. A regular customer at the store, Mr. Santiago, asked me about a hard-to-find plumbing accessory. Not only did I find it, but I also sketched out a diagram on how to install it and showed him how to do it step by step. He looked at me carefully and asked, "Have you ever worked on construction?" I nodded and briefly explained that I had studied the trade. He smiled and invited me to help him with a few home renovation projects. Better pay, real hands-on work, and most importantly, someone actually saw me for the first time. Not as some unreachable ideal, but as someone with real value. Working with Santiago slowly replaced my dishwashing shifts. I had a more stable income, learned countless practical things that textbooks don't teach. He was patient, teaching me the smallest details, like how to cut tiles without breaking them, how to check a plumbing system before installing it, how to measure by intuition instead of relying on tools. Every workday was a lesson, and for the first time, I felt not useless. 6 months after being kicked out, my parents changed their approach. My mom started texting me things like, "I miss you," and "We'd like you to come home for dinner." My dad sent a cold message, "If you want to come back, we can talk about your education." No apology, no admission of fault, just a proposal to negotiate, as if I was some forgotten item they now wanted to bargain for. I didn't respond, not because I hated them, but because I couldn't return to the place where I was thrown out like trash. I finished my first year of trade school with solid results. Not top of the class, but enough to prove I wasn't stupid. I just needed to learn in a way that worked for me. Santiago trusted me more with each passing day, giving me bigger tasks, taking me to larger job sites, introducing me to his friends. I left the cockroach apartment and moved into a new place. Still old, but no pests, no shady roommates. My new roommate, Aiden, was a nursing student. Poor but clean, considerate, and most importantly, not judgmental. I was 19. I had my first trade certificate, a steady job, enough money to eat something other than instant noodles. I didn't have my own car, but I had a solid bike and strong legs. I still carried a lot of scars, physically and emotionally, but I had survived. And most importantly, I never went back. Not after 1 month. Never. When I was nearly 20, my mom showed up at the door of my rental. No warning, no text, no asking for permission. I had just come back from work, holding a bag of food and sweating down my collar when I saw her standing there, hands clasped, looking around like she didn't want the neighbors to see. Looking at her, I noticed something strange. She looked older. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair no longer styled like it used to be. She asked if she could come in. I nodded, even though something inside me tightened. She looked around my tiny room, her eyes comparing it to the college dreams she had once imposed on me. She didn't comment on the fact that I was living alone, didn't ask if I was okay. She just asked, "How's work?" "Is money okay?" I answered briefly. Still working with Santiago, getting by, eating, still dreaming. After some small talk, she got to the real reason for her visit. "Your dad, he was passed over for a promotion. Things are a little tight financially. If you could help." She didn't finish her sentence. I looked at her, the same woman who had once called me ungrateful, a disappointment, the kid who would beg to come back in a month, now standing here, asking for help. I wasn't angry, I wasn't gloating, I just felt empty. I said, "I'm still building my life. I don't have much to spare." She bit her lip and nodded. No thank you, no apology. Just stood up, left, leaving behind an unfinished atmosphere, as if my life had once been interrupted by them. The following months I fell into an emotional void. Not exactly depression, but a kind of paralysis. I wondered, was I being too harsh? Was I seeking revenge? But then I remembered the cold nights, the times I woke up in the middle of the night to the noise from the neighbors, having to scrounge for spare change just to eat and take the bus. The feeling of standing outside while they slammed the door behind me. And I knew, I wasn't seeking revenge. I was protecting myself. Aiden, my roommate, noticed I was quieter than usual and introduced me to a friend of his. Lucy, a psychology student. We didn't fall in love, but we became friends. Lucy listened to me like no one ever had. She said something I'll always remember. "Brady, what your parents did to you wasn't tough love. It was control to feed their own need for validation. Real love is never conditional." For the first time, I had words for what I had gone through. Conditional love, emotional abuse, manipulation masked behind the image of an ideal family. I started to understand I wasn't a bad kid. I was just a kid who refused to bow down. When I was 21, I had enough money to move into a one-bedroom apartment. Small, humble, but it was my space. The apartment didn't have cockroaches. No one was yelling in my face. No looks of contempt in every glance. I bought an old sofa from Facebook Marketplace, placed it in the tiny living room, then sat there alone and cried. Not out of sadness, but because I had survived. At that time, Santiago was expanding his business. He needed a reliable assistant. That was me. He brought me on full-time, with benefits and a contract. I, the kid who had been kicked out of the house for choosing a manual trade, now had a stable job, was supporting myself, and for the first time in my life, had health insurance. My parents still text me, inviting me to Thanksgiving dinner, suggesting we should make up. But they always add, "Don't let Lydia affect family ties," as if my girlfriend was some kind of threat. I kept the communication to a minimum, a few lines of text, a holiday meal each year. After each one, I felt drained. No one asked me what I needed. It was always. They wanted me to play my part in maintaining the image of the happy family. They never understood that. I was living a life they didn't imagine, but I was happier than I'd ever been while I was at home. When I was 23, I met Lydia. It happened naturally without any grand gestures. Two strangers waiting to check out at Target, complaining about the slow self-checkout lines. Then we became friends. Then we became a couple. She was strong, straightforward, and unafraid of hurt. When I told her about my family, Lydia didn't shy away, didn't say, "Oh, poor you." She just said, "I understand. My family isn't perfect either." And that was enough. For the first time, I didn't have to hide the dark parts of myself. I was loved for the real me. The scars, the anger, the pain, and even the vulnerability I had always kept hidden. 4 years after leaving that house, I had a stable life, a good job, my own place, a wonderful partner. And the most important thing, I had achieved all of this without needing them. But then, just when I thought the past was far behind me, they came back. Not with an apology, but with the familiar words, "Family is everything. You can't turn your back on the people who gave you life. You're the only one who can fix this." The question was, should I reach out and pull them up, or let them learn the lesson they made me learn? Brutally? The message from my mom came on a quiet afternoon while I was fixing a light in a new client's apartment. A gentle, familiar line written in her flowery, calculated tone. "Brady, your dad and I are hosting a small gathering for Memorial Day. We'd love for you to come. If you want, you can bring your friend along." No Lydia, no girlfriend, just a friend, as if deliberately downgrading my relationship. This wasn't an invitation, it was a test, a trap. And even though I'd learned to step back, I still felt the blood rush in my veins. I handed the phone to Lydia. She read it, then smirked and said just 3 words. "What do they want?" She was right. They always want something. Maybe money, maybe a photo to post on Facebook, proving the family had healed. Maybe it's the chance to slap a good son label on the person they once said would beg to come back in a month. I decided to go, partly out of curiosity. Partly, I'll admit, it was because a small part of me still wanted their approval. Lydia came with me, not because she liked these awkward dinners, but because she knew I needed someone by my side. The house was the same as always. The old cream-colored sofa, the hand-embroidered rug that used to be my mom's pride. Every piece of furniture seemed to be left in place, clinging to a beautiful past, even though the present was anything but. But there was something new, my graduation photo, placed in the most visible spot. The photo of the boy they used to call ungrateful, a failure, someone they'd cast aside, now framed as if they had never erased me from their lives. The small gathering consisted of a few relatives on my mom's side and my dad's old friends, Uncle Judah and his wife. The atmosphere felt more like a class reunion than a family gathering. Everyone smiled politely. Everyone made small talk. And everyone pretended that me being kicked out of the house had never happened. I smiled. Lydia smiled. We sat quietly observing, waiting for the trap to truly open. After the meal, my dad asked me to come to the office and talk for a bit. The room that used to be off limits to me as a child. The first time I stepped in, I wasn't filled with fear. I walked in with the calm of someone who'd spent hundreds of cold nights on the streets. He started with small talk about the economy, how times were changing, and how the company no longer values longtime employees. Then he admitted he'd been let go after 27 years. The person who replaced him was a young guy with a degree, willing to work for low pay. The irony was thick in his words. He, who had pushed me into college so I wouldn't end up a blue-collar worker, was now replaced by the very type of people he'd once praised. And now, he needed me. He didn't come out and say it. He only suggested. He only confided. But his eyes spoke volumes. He needed me to save them. I sat there remembering the rainy night when I was 17, when this same man had slammed the door in my face and left me out in the world. I remembered his cold gaze, every word he said, and I remembered my mother's final words as I walked away. You'll be back. Soon enough. 9 years later, I came back, but not to beg. I came to face them, and I wasn't the son they thought would crumble. Lydia and I left the party in silence. In the car, she said only one thing. They haven't changed. They've just changed their strategy. I nodded, and I knew the real conversation wouldn't happen in their living room, filled with pretense and air freshener. A week later, my mom posted a long message on Facebook talking about the hard times the family's going through, praising the pride that is Brady, and thanking my son for his financial support, helping us get through these challenges. I was sipping coffee when Lydia handed me her phone, her face emotionless. I nearly choked. I had never agreed to help them. I had never given them a cent. And yet now I was being made out to be the good son, so they could get selective sympathy from the community. I called immediately. My mom acted like I was the one at fault, that I was too sensitive, and that people just understand. She didn't say anything specific. But I knew this was a psychological play, a way to apply social pressure so that I would play my part in their narrative. That evening, I sat down to work on a financial spreadsheet, contemplating whether I should help. Lydia sat next to me, watching me quietly, then asked, if you were your friend, someone who's been treated like this, would you tell them to help? I looked at her, then looked back at myself. I wouldn't advise anyone to sacrifice for people who had never truly loved them, unconditionally. So why was I even considering it? I texted my mom, I can't provide financial support. I'm rebuilding my life after being kicked out at 17. I had to find my own resources. You can do the same. I survived, so can you. No reply, no apology, no thank you. Just silence. Until the next day when my phone exploded with messages. From relatives, from people whose names I could barely remember. They called me ungrateful. They said I'd forgotten my roots. They told me I should be the man my father raised me to be. I laughed, a bitter laugh deep in my chest. My father didn't raise me to be the man I am. It was their cruelty that was the harsh teacher, the one that taught me how to grow up. I decided I would meet them one last time. Just once. No more pretending. No more making up. This time, it would be to draw a clear boundary. And if necessary, it could be the final end. I stopped the car in front of the old house on a cloudy morning. Not too cold, but not warm either. The house hadn't changed much since I walked out, but now it seemed smaller, faded, worn. Weeds grew all along the entrance. The flower pots my mom used to care for were now dry, their yellowing leaves scattered across the cracked earth. I walked up to the porch, the same place where 9 years ago I stood in the rain, backpack on my back, my heart shattered. The door opened. It was my dad. His face was hollow, his hair graying, his gaze no longer proud, but instead filled with exhaustion. No hug, no, hello, son, just a nod. And I walked in, free. No longer the child asking for permission. The house smelled of old dust and dampness. My graduation photo was still there, placed in a spot of honor as if nothing had ever happened. My mom was already sitting at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red, a tissue clutched in her hand. I pulled out a chair and sat down. No pleasantries, no waiting for them to speak. This time, I was the one who spoke first. I'm here to say something. You're going to listen. They stayed silent. I looked them both straight in the eye, not avoiding their gaze, not blinking. 9 years ago, you kicked me out of this house just because I didn't take the path you wanted. You didn't ask if I had anywhere to go. Didn't ask if I had anything to eat. Didn't care if I was okay. For the last 9 years, you've only reached out when you needed something. Not a word of apology, not a single kind question. My dad was about to interrupt, but I raised my hand, cutting him off. I didn't come here for excuses. I came here to set conditions. My mom started crying. She talked about love, about family, about blood ties, but I quietly continued. From today, if you want to maintain a relationship with me, here are the conditions. First, I will help pay off the mortgage one time. After that, you need to sell the house, rearrange your lives, and take full responsibility for yourselves. Second, that Facebook post has to be taken down, immediately, and you need to tell the family the truth, that I haven't been providing or helping fully. No hints, no half-truths. The truth, clearly. Third, if you want to stay in touch, you're going to go to family therapy with me. Not to go back to how it was, but to learn how to respect boundaries, to listen, and to fix things if you still want to be my parents. And the last one, my life, my career, my love, my girlfriend. They are all mine. If you ever again disrespect or put down Lydia, I'll cut you off permanently. No texts, no greetings. This relationship will end. The whole house fell into silence. My mom was quiet. My dad looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not the look of someone above me, but the look of someone who knew they had lost. Who do you think you are, setting conditions like this? He spat. I stood up. My eyes didn't blink. I'm the kid who stood at the door of this house at 17, kicked out into the rain. I'm the person who survived without anyone's help. I'm the person you thought would beg to come back. But no, I've stood tall. I've built my own life. And now I'm the one who decides if I'll allow you in or not. There were no screams, no slamming of tables, just the final look of surrender from my dad. You did well, he said. His voice wasn't angry, wasn't full of contempt. Not what I had imagined, but you did it. Not an apology, but the first honest words I'd heard in 9 years. I wrote a check, enough to cover their mortgage. I placed it on the table. This is because I want to end this, not because of debt, not for family, just because I don't want anyone owing anyone anymore. I left that house feeling lighter than I ever had in years. As I reached the porch, my dad stepped behind me, standing at the doorstep, the same place where, 9 years ago, he had slammed the door shut. He looked at me, nodded. This time, it was real. Take care of yourself, and thank you. I didn't look back. I didn't shed a tear. I just whispered quietly, I know. That night, I held Lydia. I didn't say anything. I just silently deleted the 27 missed calls in my phone from the past weeks. Every swipe felt like wiping away a layer of dust from my mind. And when I got to the last line, I realized what I felt inside wasn't triumph or revenge, but peace. Each missed call, Mom, missed call, Dad, missed call, Aunt Carol, felt like the last remnants of the years I had lived to please others. I looked at them like someone looks at a healed scar, remembering the pain, but not feeling it anymore. Lydia lay on her side watching me. She didn't ask questions, didn't interfere, just gently held my hand. I took a deep breath, let my finger glide lightly over the screen. Delete all. Done. No fireworks. No emotional background music. Just a simple action, but it felt as heavy as 9 years of growth, then letting go. Life didn't turn into a fairy tale immediately after that. But there was one thing I hadn't felt before. Peace. I continued working with Santiago, who had gone from being a regular client to a benefactor, and eventually a partner. He started trusting me with bigger contracts, sometimes even letting me run a small crew of laborers. For the first time, I signed a contract with a big construction company, not as an apprentice, but as a professional partner. Lydia and I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, bright, with a balcony, plenty of sunlight. We adopted a rescue dog named Mako, skinny, shy, but every day he became happier and stronger, just like me when I started over. And when I look at Mako, his eyes full of trust every morning, I see a part of myself being reborn. I started writing in my journal again. No longer just rants, but small notes. The client praised the construction team for being polite. Lydia bought a lavender plant for the balcony. It smells so good. Made spaghetti tonight. Didn't burn it like last time. Small things, but real life. As for my parents, they did exactly what I asked. The old house was sold. They moved into a smaller apartment in a different neighborhood. My mom's Facebook no longer had those cryptic posts, but instead pictures of flowers, Bible quotes, and sometimes photos of homemade baked goods. They kept their distance, but in the right way. We started going to family therapy once a month, not to erase the past, but to learn how to face it without letting it control our present. There were times when everything exploded. I got angry, my mom cried, and my dad stayed silent. But there were other times when we just sat there, listening. We weren't trying to go back to being the family we were before, because we couldn't. But at least I wasn't the only one who had to endure the silence and the avoidance anymore. One day while I was working, I got a message from my dad. Are you free? I have some old tools, thought you might be able to use them. Simple. No expectations. No hidden meaning. I drove over. He handed me an old wooden box with a few hammers, a ruler, and some screwdrivers, worn but clean, tools he'd used back when he worked at the factory. I never realized, these tools are just as valuable as a college degree, he said, his hands trembling. You're doing great, Brady. I just nodded. I didn't say thank you. But inside, a door that had been firmly shut was now cracked open. A few months later, Lydia and I were walking through a flea market. She pointed at a simple silver ring and casually said, if there ever comes a day when you propose, I want a ring like this. Simple. I looked at her. This girl who had held my hand through every emotional wave, who never judged, never imposed anything on me. Someday, that day will come sooner than you think. We smiled. Mako barked, almost as if agreeing. I don't have a perfect family, but I have a real life, no pretending, no playing roles. I used to be the kid standing in the rain, with a backpack and a broken heart. I used to sleep on a sofa, eating ramen, working 2 jobs just to afford rent. I used to be called ungrateful, a failure, someone who would be begging to come back in a month. But now I'm Brady, the survivor, the man who grew, and the one who redefined happiness on his own terms. And if you're somewhere in your own journey, maybe on a sofa, maybe in a tiny apartment full of roaches, remember this. You can start over. You can rewrite your story. And you deserve to be loved, not because you're perfect, but because you are who you are. If this story has touched you, don't forget to hit subscribe, share it so more people can hear it, and leave a message below. Because maybe you're not just retelling my story, but your own too. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.